Hi guys, Dennis here, and welcome to my series on iOS development. In this short video, we're going to look at implementing a custom UITableViewCell. Although the standard TableViewCell gives us a couple of layout choices to choose from, it's actually quite limited in what it can display, especially when it comes to displaying images. The default behavior of the TableViewCell image view property will not allow us to manage the location, size, number of views, and other properties. So to really take control of your development, you're going to need to implement a custom TableViewCell eventually. But the good news is it's quite easy to accomplish. To give us some data to work with, I've uploaded a project file that contains a set of images and a property list that we'll use to populate our table view. The name of the file is custom.tableviewcell.zip. You can find a link for this folder on my About page of my YouTube channel. So download that folder to your desktop and we'll get started. Okay, let's open up Xcode and select create a new project. And I like to start with an empty application, so we'll select that and click next, and we'll call our project custom table view cell. We can leave the class prefix blank, but make sure devices have been set to iPhone. Click next and create, and we have our project. Okay, we're going to need a storyboard, so let's add that. So we'll right click on our project and select new file and select storyboard. Click next, make sure device family is set to iPhone, next again, and we'll call our storyboard main storyboard. Click create. Okay, let's jump over to our source file under app delegate. And the first method, the application did finish launching. Since we're using the storyboard, we can get rid of all the code except for the return statement. Now we'll jump back over to our project, and under deployment information, under main interface, let's use the drop down to assign the main storyboard as our main interface. Now we'll select the main storyboard, and let's drag an instance of TableViewController onto our board. And we'll go ahead and embed that in a navigation controller, which gives us the added benefit of having a title bar or a nav bar. And we're just going to call this contacts, like so. And while we're here, let's go ahead and select our table view prototype cell, and under style we're going to make sure that that's set to subtitle, and make sure the selection and accessory and editing properties are all set to none. Okay, now you should have your project folder that you downloaded from my FTP site. So let's go ahead and add the files that we're going to need here. So let's open up the project folder. And let's first grab the property list and drag that over. And make sure that the destination copy items into destinations group folder has been checked. And there's our plist, and we still need our images. So before we drag our images over, let's click on the main project name here, and we're going to create a new group, and we're going to call this group images. And now we're going to drag all our images, and we'll start with these first four here, into that new group that we just created. And now we can get the remaining images on here, like so. And we can close out that. We won't need that any longer. And we'll go ahead and expand that back. Okay, we'll open up one here just to make sure that everything loaded right, and it did. And good old Sarah Evans looks pretty good there. Okay, so we can close that, go back over to our storyboard now. We're also going to need a class file for our table view controllers. So let's go ahead and build that, and that'll be a new file. And this time we'll use CocoaTouch Objective-C class. Click next. And this is going to be a subclass of UITableViewController, and we'll just call this contacts table view controller. Click next. and create. And now we can go back over to our storyboard, select our controller, open up our inspectors panel, and we'll go to the identity inspector, and let's change the class to the class that we just created, which is the contacts table view controller. We can close out our inspector. So before we get into coding, let's take a quick glance at our property list. So let's click on that. And as you can see, our property list is an array of dictionaries, and each dictionary item represents the first, last name, and file name of the image of each contact. And if we can open them up like that, it's like so. So that's basically what we have to work with. So now we can jump over to the source file for the table view controller and start coding. So we'll jump over there. So as we just discovered, our property list is an array of dictionary items, and each item represents a contact file with the first name, last name, and the image name. So the first thing we want to do is create a couple of properties that represent our array and the dictionary that's associated with each item in that array. So let's create a couple of properties here, and the first one will be a property, non-atomic, and strong, and this first one will be for our array, and we'll just call this contacts array. And the second property will be a non-atomic, strong, and this will be for our dictionary, and we'll just call this contact. Okay, now we can go ahead and synthesize those properties as well here. So let's do that, synthesize, and the first one is the contacts array, and the second one is the contacts. So the next stop is the viewDidLoad method. Let's scroll up there, and we don't need these comments, so we'll delete those. So what we need to do here is create a reference to our property list. So we'll use a string, and we'll just call this path equals, and we need a couple of brackets here, and we'll use nsBundle main bundle, and then we'll use the convenience method that is path for resource. And it asks for the file name, and that is contacts, and the type, of course, is property list, which is plist, like so. Okay, and then we can instantiate our array with the convenience method array with contents of file. So we've already synthesized our contacts array, so we can just use contacts array equals ns array with contents of file. And our file name, we're just going to add path. That does it for that. But you know, it's really important that you get into the habit of understanding what each method does. And to do so, just option click and take a look. So let's do that for the array with contents of file. We'll option click on that. And under the description, it says creates and returns an array containing the contents of the file specified by a given path. So get into that habit, because that's going to really bring you up to speed on what you're doing here. So now we're ready to code out our TableView Datasource methods. So let's scroll down there. And this first one, the number of sections in TableView, well, we're only going to be using one section. Let's get rid of our warning. So we'll return a 1. Next up is the number of rows in section, and that's easy to calculate. We'll just use our array. We're going to need a bracket, contacts array, and we'll call the method count. Next up is the TableViewCell for row at index path, and by now you're familiar with setting up this particular method. But first, let's make sure that we've assigned a cell identifier in our storyboard. So let's jump back over to our storyboard, and we'll click on our cell, open up our utilities panel, go to our attributes inspector, and it's a good thing we came back to check because we forgot to put an identifier in there. So let's do that now. And we can close out our panel. We won't need that anymore. Go back over to our source file. Okay, so these first couple of statements you're familiar with. We're simply ensuring that our cell is dequeued and reused. So let's go into configuring the cell. So what we need to do is grab each item by row that's in our contact array. So we're going to assign that to our dictionary item, which is contact. So we use contact, our dictionary, and that equals our array, which is contacts array, and they simply do a index path dot row, like so. Okay, and based upon what we've grabbed, we need to extract the 3 data points contained in the dictionary, the first name, the last name, and the image name. So we're going to need 3 strings here. So the first guy in a string will be our first name, and that equals our dictionary, which is contact, and we'll use a bracket, and that will be first name. Then we need another string, and that will be our last name, and that equals our dictionary once again, and a bracket, and that is last name. We need one more in a string, and this will be our image name. We'll grab it from our dictionary, and that is called image name. Okay, so now we need to create a UI image object, and we'll use the image name convenience method to do so. So let's use a UI image, and we're just going to call this simply image. And as I indicated, we'll use the convenience method, so we need a UI image, and then we use image name, and the image name, of course, is going to be the string that we just created up here, like so. And once again, let's option click on our convenience method just to see what it does here. So we'll do an option click, open up our little dialog box, and under the description it says return the image object associated with the specified file name. We gave it a file name, so it returned an image. So finally, we can populate the cell with the appropriate data. So we use cell.textLabel.text, and that equals first name, and then cell.detailed text label.text equals last name, and finally cell.imageView.image equals image that we just created right up here above. And don't forget the colon, like so. And the last thing we do right below that is return cell. So we ought to be able to build and run now. Let's take a look at what we have. And actually, let's change the scheme to 4-inch, make it a little bit bigger here. Let's run that again. Okay, so everything is displaying, but it's easy to see what our problem is. Our images that we're using are of various sizes, and unfortunately the default image view doesn't provide us much control over how the images are displayed. We want our images to fill the container view and be of equal size, so we end up with a nice and neat and consistent display. And as a matter of fact, in this project, we don't want our image displayed on the left-hand side, which is the default location. We want ours displayed on the right-hand side. And we want our 2 labels to be side by side and of equal font size. So to accomplish all these things, we need to create a custom table view cell. So let's do that now. So we'll stop this build. So the first thing we need to do is create a class file for our custom table view cell. And we're going to call this custom cell. So let's go ahead and right click and create a new file. And this is going to be an Objective-C class. We'll click next, and we're just going to call this custom cell, and make sure it's a subclass of UITableViewCell. Very important. Click next and create. Okay, now we can jump over to our storyboard and make the necessary changes there. And the first thing that we need to do is select our cell and change its style to custom. Open up our utilities panel and we'll go to style and let's change that to custom. Now we can assign our new class file to the table view cell using the identity inspector. So we'll open up the identity inspector, use the drop down, and now we're going to assign that custom class that we just created, custom cell. Alright, so let's add the objects that we need. So we're going to need a UI view and 2 labels. So let's grab our labels first here. And there's one, and there is the other. And let's size these. We'll just do an approximate size here for right now. And that looks alright. We can get rid of the titles in there. We'll switch over to our identity inspector and delete the text that's in there currently, like so. Okay, now we need a UI image view. And let's drag that on board. And we'll size that. Let's go over to the size inspector. And let's try X at about 248 here. And we'll try Y at 56. And that doesn't look like that's going to work, but the width, we can make that 52, and the height, make it 52. And then let's change the cell height a little bit. So click on the table view, and under row, and make sure you click on the table view, not the cell. And under row height, let's make that, oh, probably, let's do 70. Alright, now we'll center everything. Right about there for that guy, and one more, and we can center our image view, and we'll bring that, snug it right up to the edge there, like so. So what do we end up with? X 248, Y is 60, and width is 52, and height is 52 on our image view. And we may need to make that label a little bit wider. We want to get a first name and last name in there. Okay, now that we have everything positioned approximately the way we want it, we're ready to create our property. So let's go ahead and do that. And as a matter of fact, let's go back to the UI image view just for a second, because there's a few other things that we probably should do. We want to make sure, let's go to the attributes inspector. We want to change the mode from scale to fill to aspect fill. And if you've ever wondered about any of these things, I encourage you to go up to Apple's documentation and check it out. As a matter of fact, we can do that real quick here just to give you an idea. And all of these settings would fall under the category of UI view and Windows architecture. So let's do a Google search for that. Windows view, there we go, let's try this guy here. Okay, this is perfect. So view and window architecture for iOS. So we can scroll down and let's see what we want to find here. Content modes, that's exactly what we're looking for. And this is perfect. Let me enlarge this a little bit so you can get a better view of it. This shows the original image and what it's going to look like in the image view container. Remember, we've got a container there, and the UI view content mode left would put it like this. The scale aspect fill would end up cutting something off, but it would fill the content or the image view completely. And then you have these others. Another good one is aspect fit, but that would end up making a smaller image, and then scale to fill ends up distorting it. So I think the best mode for our particular application will be aspect fill, and we'll check that once we get to running our code here. So let me go ahead and close that back, and we'll change the aspect mode to aspect fill. And one other thing we want to do here is we want to select the clip subviews. Okay, now we can close out our utilities panel and we're ready to start adding our properties. So let's select our view controller and open up our assistant editor, and let's make sure that we have our table view cell header like so. And let's make some room, and now we can add our properties here. So we're going to need 2 labels and 1 image view. So we'll control drag. And I like to preface my custom views with the word custom just so I can keep them separate from other image views. So let's just call this, this will be custom, let's see, we want to do capital first name label. So custom first name label, and then we need a custom last name label. And we want to make sure that like so. And then the last guy will be a custom image view like so. So let's check all these, make sure our spelling is correct before we finalize it, and everything looks good. Okay, we can go ahead and close out our assistant editor. And before we jump over to our table view controller source file to finish coding, I want to show you something. So let's go ahead and build and run. And notice that even though we've changed our prototype cell to custom and made layout changes in our storyboard, the default configuration is still being displayed. To implement our custom cell, we've got to make some changes in our cell for row at index path method. And as you can see, the only change that's really happened is we've added height to our row. But other than that, none of the changes we just did have taken place. The default configuration is still running. So let's stop that, jump over to our source file, and do the necessary last bit of coding here. And the first thing we need to do is add an import statement to import that custom cell that we just created. Okay, so now we can go down to our cell for row index path. And the first stop is, here we're instantiating UITableViewCell. We want to change that and instantiate an instance of our custom cell. So we'll just change that to custom cell. And then just to keep everything separate, as I indicated when we were doing the properties for the custom cell, I like to preface everything that's custom with the word custom. So I'll change that to custom cell. So now obviously we have some changes that we have to incorporate down in our configuration here. So we'll change all these to custom cell and make sure we select this guy right here. And then custom cell does have a text label property, but that's not the one we want to use. We want to use our customized version, so we need to change that to custom first name label dot text. Okay, now basically the same thing we need to do with our last name label. We'll change that to custom cell, and instead of detailed text label dot text, we want to use the custom last name label dot text. And last but not least, we want to change the custom cell dot custom image view dot image equals image. And then last, we need to return not a cell, but our custom cell. Let's build and run, see what we have now. Now you can see this looks a whole lot better. Our labels are looking the way they want. Our images appear on the right hand side just the way we want. And all the images are of the same size, nicely formatted and cropped. That's the way we want it to look. So as you can see, implementing a custom table view cell offers a lot of flexibility, especially when it comes to images. As you get further into app development, you'll find yourself customizing cells more often than not. So that wraps it up for this video. I hope it's been helpful. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated, and if you like what you've seen, take a moment and give me the thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.